how do you just find like what you do? You're not a motivational speaker. Like, where do you fall in what bucket would you say you fall in terms of what you do for a living? Let's just start with that. And then we're going to delve into hopefully lots of other stuff.
So, I mean, my immediate reaction is to say I'm an optimist. You know, I define myself by who I am, not what I do. And I think that one of the big challenges that a lot of people face is they intertwine their identity with their work.
Yeah.
Right? I am a lawyer, you know,
yeah.
I am a fitness coach or whatever, you know, somebody wants to do. And then if you lose that job by your choice or not your own choice, or if you have great success and you get older and you decide to leave and retire or do something else, I see a lot of people have an identity crisis because they no longer do the thing that they did.
Yeah.
And so I don't mind what I do because I get to be an optimist in everything that I do. And the way I live my life is I live completely focused with a vision that is extremely far away. Completely, I'll never get there. You know, I imagine a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe wherever they are, and end the day fulfilled by the work that they do. And for me, the objective is to figure out all the ways that I can to start moving closer and closer towards that world. And so for the better part of the last, decade or more, I bet on leaders. I believe that leaders are the best bet that we have to get to that world that I imagine. That if we can find and celebrate and support the kinds of leaders who can build great organizations where people feel like they belong, that feel like they're contributing something bigger than themselves, then we are more likely to get to that world, right? Now, what's my role in that? Again, completely agnostic. I never, ever imagined that I would be an author. I was never one of those people who thought I had a book in them, And after every book I've written, I've said, okay, that's probably my last one. And I said that after the first one,
Wow.
But here I am, an author, because the opportunity showed up that I thought, oh, this is a good way to move towards that vision, right? Then people would invite me to speak about my ideas. And I thought, okay, I've never, ever wanted to be a public speaker. Didn't even know that was a career. It's
That's
true.
Interesting, right?
I actually am more of a behind the scenes person. I've never desired to be in the front of a proscenium. But when the opportunities presented themselves, I thought, well, this is a very good way for me to spread this message and to spread this vision. And so when you ask me, what do? I do anything that I need to do to advance towards that vision. These days, I'll write books and I'll speak about it. But who knows what the next 5 years will look like? It could be completely, completely different.
Well, oh my, okay, so in that one answer, I have now 50
Isn't that annoying
questions.
that you say, what do you do? And it takes me 30 minutes to answer.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have a friend who did a TED Talk on this, like when someone asks you that question of what do you do, to how to like do an elevator pitch.
Well, I can tell you what I say on an airplane. If somebody says, what do you do?
Tell me what you say on an airplane.
I say I teach leaders and organizations how to inspire people.
All right, that's good.
And if they believe what I believe, they say, inspiration, that's cool. How do you do that? And we can talk about my work for as long as they can stand it. And if they don't believe what I believe, they say, what kind of companies? What kind of organizations? So it's a great filter.
Yeah.
Immediately I know if they're on the same wavelength as me or not.
Do people recognize you on airplanes?
These days, yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, okay, first of all, I guess to go back even further than I was going to, did you even... When your TED Talk is probably the number 2 or 3 most viewed of all time, right? Like 80 million, 100 million by now. Something insane.
I don't know if it's that high, but yeah, it's done
high.
Well. Yeah,
it's pretty. And then of course I'm sure it's actually even higher because it's been shared and shared and shared, right? But were you even shocked? Like, how did that even because that takes you? I did a TED Talk recently. A couple years ago, and that was considered a viral TED Talk with like 5 million or 6 million. And that put my life on a different trajectory. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine with your type of success in that TED Talk, were you completely floored at like the response that it had?
Yes and no is the simple answer.
Okay.
Is
there ever a simple answer with you?
Sometimes.
Okay.
The answer is yes and no. You know, I had been giving versions of that talk for 3 years before I actually did the TEDx.
Okay.
I'd never done it that short.
Right.
You know, they were hour-long versions. And so I knew that the message had resonance. Mm-hmm. And I'd been asked so many of the difficult questions that I'd worked out a lot of the kinks in the thinking. So I knew that the message had resonance. I knew that people liked it. So I knew that.
Okay.
But I never expected this rinky-dink TEDx talk that I did in a hangar in Puget Sound with like 50 or 100 people in the room, you know, where the camera it's very low quality.
Right.
You know, my microphone breaks in the middle of me talking, you know.
Me too.
You know, like literally they like trading out mics, you know.
I remember seeing that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. And it's living proof that things can go wrong and it'll be fine.
Yeah. Totally fine.
So I didn't know that the TEDx talk would do what it did.
Okay.
And back then it was unheard of to put a TEDx on the main TED website. So they only put them on YouTube.
Right.
And there was a separate page for TEDx talks just on YouTube, you know,
right.
And then the main TED talks would just be on the TED.com. And it very quickly became the most watched TEDx of all. And then they put it on TED.com. And I only found out that they were going to do that a week before they did it. So, and then it continued to grow, you know, extremely fast. So yeah, that was all a shock to me. That was all a surprise to me. I knew the message had resonance. I never knew that it was going to do that. That was a surprise. Yeah.
So before you did that, I mean, you said you were doing these talks anyway. So you were already doing public speaking at some level, right?
Yeah.
So just walk me through, because I'm actually very curious about you before you. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm really kind of curious about. So you were like disgruntled with your career a little bit, right?
I wouldn't say disgruntled.
Didn't love it.
I'd fallen out of love. Yeah.
Okay.
I had no passion for my career.
Okay.
And this was a chosen career. Like, I started my own business in a category, in a profession that I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life in.
Consulting.
Marketing.
Oh, okay. I thought it was,
you know, and to wake up one morning with a superficially good life. I owned my own business. We had amazing clients. We did really good work. Our clients liked us and didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
It's kind of distressing because, as I said when we started, you know, so many of us intertwine our identities with our work. And if I don't like my work, then who am I?
Right.
And so I went through that, which was incredibly unfun. And it was the discovery of this little idea that I called the Golden Circle, you know, where we all know what we do. Some of us know how we do it, but very few of us know why we do what we do. And I realized I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. And it was that crisis that was designed to do nothing more than help me find my own passion, to get back my mojo, that put me in a path that was unexpected. My entire career is an accident, you know.
Amazing.
I am living proof that you don't have to have a plan.
Right. Exactly. And it worked out for you, right?
You have to have a vision. You have to have a vector. You have to have a direction, but you definitely don't need to know the individual steps.
So you kind of answered earlier. Well, before I even go into that, you said something in your first answer to me, which I thought was interesting, that you're not defining yourself by what you do, but the problem I find in today's time anyway, everything's kind of very much dovetails, like who you are, what you do. What you do is really who you are. So you become friends with the people you work with or who are aligned with what you do. There's very little separation in that. So I'm interested in how how are you able to like compartmentalize that a little bit? You know what I mean? Because I find it very difficult. Like what I do, it's not, two things happen. I think that other people compartmentalize you as well. So if I was a health and fitness person, but I'm also this thing and that thing and that thing, the other, like outside from that, people pigeonhole you. So it's very hard to break away. You're saying that like you're not really defined by what you do, but you know what you want or how like you're being an optimist. what kind of advice or would you suggest for other people out there? Because I think that there's a lot of confusion and people do get pigeonholed and or they don't know the difference. Like they're confused because like you said, they are what they do. And so there's no distinction.
Yeah, I still get pigeonholed. People know me as the thing that is familiar, and so I remember in the early days, when the only thing I could talk about was starting with why.
Yeah.
When I started to have more ideas and different ideas, and I would pitch to these prospective engagements, I'd like to talk about something new. They'd all say no because they wanted me to do the thing that they knew was good. They wouldn't let me try something new. And so I just arbitrarily picked one and basically didn't do as I was told and decided to do something new on the stage. And I think there's I'm not saying there's a one size fits all here. There's a risk tolerance, but I like testing things in real life. Many of my ideas are from real life scenarios where it's not like practice. Okay, it's ready for the real world now. There have been more than one occasion where I've walked out on stage and go, okay, they brought me in to talk about this, but I'm having some new ideas. Are you guys okay if I try talking about this? It might completely fail. Just wanted to get some, and like people, especially you pick your audiences, you pick a room full of entrepreneurs,
right?
They're fine with it,
Right.
If I pick a room full of engineers, maybe not,
right.
But maybe not, maybe engineers are fine with that too. And then I would try new things. And I think what makes it work is very often when we do these things, we show up with a selfish disposition, right? I hope they like me. I hope they like my work. I hope they buy my book. I hope they, go to my website. I hope they follow me on social media.
Right.
And we act that way. We put a picture behind us on the PowerPoint and it has all of our social media handles on it, and it has a phone number and a website and an email address.
Right.
And we say at the end, somebody asks a question, it's like, question whatever, and we reply, well, you'll have to read my book, or well, that's from my book, and it's like we put ourselves, and that's people can tell. And in those cases, we're not rooting for you. In fact, we're going to try and trip you up.
Right.
Because we can't help ourselves. It's entertaining.
Yes.
You put yourself at the front, we'll have fun with that. And so I've learned early to show up with a giver's mentality, where I don't care if they like me. I don't care if they buy a book. I don't care if they follow me on social media or not. All I know is I have something that I think is really valuable, and I'm going to give it to you. I want to give it to you. And I believe, and I'm giving it to you with all of my gusto and all of my energy. And so like, I remember, people would apologize because they said there's going to be this size event and like only half the number of people showed up and they're apologizing. And I know a lot of speakers who'd get angry. You promised me this size audience. And I was like, well, I just feel sorry for the people who didn't show up, because the people who did show up are going to get all of me.
Right.
I hold back nothing. And I think when you show up with a giver's heart, and I literally will say that before I go out on a stage, I will literally say under my breath before I step on the stage, you're here to give. I will remind myself that what I'm about to do is an act of generosity. I think I have something pretty and I want to share it. And people can tell.
Yeah. Authenticity.
People can tell. And so you have a wide berth when you show up with a giver's heart. You can make mistakes and you can stumble over your words and you can talk a little bit too much like I am right now. And people are just fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think, we're highly attuned social animals. And if you show up to give, you believe it or not, you can experiment a lot.
How can someone change that though, right? Like if you're innately someone who doesn't think like that, right? Like I'm here to give, because you're right. Like I think human nature, I want to sell my book, go check out my handle, do this, do that, do that. How do you shift like your mindset? Can you train your brain to think differently like that? So it is authentic, because you by just saying it doesn't make it so.
No, correct.
Right?
Of course you can train yourself. Like, I wish I could be healthy, but there's so many things, and I'm just not a healthy person. And, can I ever be healthy? Of course. You just practice it. Like you just start. Yes, of course. And it may not work the first 5 or 10 times. You go to the gym a bunch of times in a row, you will see no results.
Right.
Like these things sometimes take time. It's the same. The best I can sum it up when I really started to learn this lesson was many years ago, I had a meeting at the Pentagon of all places with a big fancy general. And I was waiting in the foyer, just waiting for him. And have you ever had it where you go to a meeting or
Pentagon? No.
Well, I mean, you've had meetings, and somebody comes to get you, to take you to the conference room or the office or whatever, and you have hallway talk because walking quietly down a hallway is too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so you have hallway talk, which is nonsense. It's things like, how's hot day out today, or did you have an easy trip?
Totally.
And
yes,
it's just nonsense. And as soon as you walk into the room, that ceases, right? Well, that's what happened to me. The general came to get me, and we were walking back to his office, and the hallway talk ensued. And he said, Simon, I had everyone in my office read your book. And I said, my publisher thanks you. And he said, tell them not to bother. I had them read my copy.
That's what he said to you?
That's what he said to me. So I learned total book sales, 1. Total impact, huge.
Yeah.
Versus I go to an event and they give away 500 free copies of my book, but they use them as, coasters and doorstops. Total book sales, 500, total impact, 0. And so I had to learn that it's not always easy to measure the impact that we have in the short term. Now, I know over the long term, book sales are a reflection of the value of my ideas and whether people want them. Otherwise, it would just stop selling. Like I know over the time, but in the short term, literally, it tells me nothing. And I think too many of us confuse that the short-term impacts that we're having are producing long-term value, or conversely, having no short-term impact means we're having no value. Mm-hmm. And so I treat it like exercise, which is I know that the process matters. So for example, you can't go to the gym for 9 hours and get into shape. It literally doesn't work, right? No matter how much effort you put in. But if you work out every single day for 20 minutes, guaranteed 100%, you will get into shape.
Right.
When will you get into shape? No clue.
Right.
No one knows. Over time. And everyone's different. Some people a little quicker, some people a little slower. And yet we are 100% sure, 100%, it'll 100% work. I just don't know when. And we're also obsessed with predicting when. It has to be this quarter. It has to be the end of the year. It has to be when we pay taxes. It has, whatever it is, and I got very comfortable saying, I know that if I stick to the process, I work out every day for 20 minutes. I know 100% it's going to work. And I have to get comfortable that I have no control over when. Mm-hmm. Sometimes quicker, sometimes slower. And so the things that I wrote about in Start With Why is the game plan that I have followed since I first wrote about it, since I first started talking about it. I do start with why. When somebody says, what do you do? I don't tell them what I do. I tell them what I believe. And I wrote about the law of diffusion of innovations, which is a religion for me.
And explain what that is.
So all populations sift across the standard deviation, the old bell curve, right? If you have high performers in a population, you're going to have low performers, you're going to have an average, always, right? What the law of diffusion tells us is that the first 2.5% of any population are your innovators. These are your big idea people, right? Then the next about 13.5% of your population are early adopters. These people are very comfortable spending extra money, time, energy, making some sort of sacrifice to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, that reflects who they are. Then you have the majority, the early majority and the late majority, a little more cynical, a little more practical. What's in it for me? Will I get my money back if it doesn't work? Will I get in trouble? That kind of thing, a little more risk averse. And then finally, the last 16%, you have your laggards. The only reason they do anything is because you basically don't have a choice anymore.
Right.
What the law of diffusion tells us is that if you want to have mass market success, if you want an idea to spread or be sticky, you have to achieve between 15 and 18% market penetration. And then a social phenomenon happens called a tipping point, and it just goes. But because most of us want the majority, we aim all of our efforts at the majority, which actually doesn't work because the majority will not try something new until somebody else has tried it first.
Right.
And so as soon as I learned that, I became obsessed with with early adopters. And, I get accused now, people say, oh, but you can afford to turn work down. I'm like, no. I've been turning work down when I was living hand to mouth. Like I needed every gig I could get because I was broke and I had no money in my bank account. Like
you were?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I was literally living paycheck to paycheck. And
when was this?
I mean, just when I first discovered Start With Why. I remember I walked away from a marketing business that I'd lost passion for. When I discovered this Start With Why thing, I decided to make myself the guinea pig, and I shut down my marketing company. So I had no discernible.
So you did shut it down. I was going to ask you that.
I shut it down. I had no discernible. I had no discernible income, and so I was literally like scraping it together.
But you had clients. You just decided one day.
I walked away from them.
You just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't because like the business was like flailing.
It was flailing because when you have no passion for something, turns out it makes it a lot harder.
Right.
So I mean, it's
it's
like, yes, I'd lost my passion. The business was flailing. Yeah. I probably wouldn't have gone out of business, but it definitely felt that way.
Right.
But
you're turning down all this business.
So I'll give you a real life example. I got very, very good at discerning who was a believer and who wasn't, who was early adopter and who wasn't. So go back to the elevator pitch. Mm-hmm. What do? I teach leaders and organizations how to inspire people. If they hear the word inspire, okay, they believe what I believe. If they don't hear the word inspire, they don't believe what I believe, right? It's what wavelength, are we on the same wavelength? And I remember, this is a true story. I remember this was early days. There was no Start With Why book. There was no Start With Why TED Talk. And I was just sort of like trying to figure it out. And I was doing consulting, doing why discovery stuff. And I remember a guy called me and he said, I got your phone number from someone. Convince me why I should hire you. Right? And I did not go into sales pitch mode because what went through my head is, this guy's not an early adopter. This guy will not help me spread my message. This guy he wants to be convinced. And I literally said, I can't help you. He goes, come on, convince me. I said, there's nothing I can say or do that will convince you that you and I should work together. I'm the wrong guy for you, right? And I never worked with him. Now I needed the client, but he was the wrong client. And I'd rather struggle just a little bit longer to find the right person to work with. Because when I found the right people to work with, even if I made a little less money, what they did is they told 5 people about me or 10 people about me. But they did more than that. They told the right people about me.
Right.
Or they made introductions by saying, Simon, there's somebody you need to meet. And they would tell their friends, you need to meet this person, right? Which is way more powerful than me saying anything that if it comes from an objective third party. And so other people were responsible for my message spreading. Other people responsible for the people I met. Other people responsible for helping me sell the book. I had no PR machine or anything like that.
Right.
It was people, I remember going in the early days, I would ask the audience, how many of you have seen the TED Talk? And a lot of people raised their hands. And I said, how many people were sent it by someone else? And that number was usually around 75%. So these people weren't even TEDsters.
Right.
Somebody said, oh my God, who would love this? And they would send it to their friend.
Yeah.
And that's all the law of diffusion. And so there's nothing that I'm doing that's mythical or magical, right? There's social phenomena that I've written about, other people have written about. The law of diffusion is not my idea. It's Emmett Rogers from the 1960s, The only thing that I did, like anything that works, is I had the discipline to do it.
That's right.
You want to get into shape, you have to have the discipline to do it. You want to be healthy, you have to have the discipline to do it. And you have to get comfortable that you cannot predict when success happens. You just have to believe that the process works and you stick to the process. That's all I did. And everything that I did is written about in that book.
Yeah.
That's literally the thing that I followed.
So you actually, you believe, number one, and you had the discipline to kind of follow it through.
It's hard to turn down. Now, look, it's not a perfect system. Even somebody who's very healthy sometimes wants to have a big piece of chocolate cake.
Yes.
But you do it with eyes wide open. Mm-hmm. This puts you slightly out of balance. Mm-hmm. You know that you might have to do a little extra work to get it out of your system. And you also know you can do it now and then, but you can't do it every day.
Right.
Right? So did I do business with clients I shouldn't have? Of course I did.
Right. Really human, for God's sake.
Or if I needed to pay bills.
Right.
But I did it with eyes wide open, not believing that this was going to set me up, and I was doing it for a short term because I needed a little infusion of sugar.
Right.
And I knew not to do it too often. So it's the same mentality.
Yeah, it is the same mentality. It's just very hard to do. And people like to take the short-term gratification, quick fix all the time, especially in today's time, I feel like. I don't know what, I do know what you think, but I feel like when I grew up, I do know what you think. It was a different mentality like than it is today. Like people's work ethic isn't as strong, if I was to be honest, what I think. What I call it's very much like a coddle culture type of world right now, where everyone like always gets a participation trophy. People are offended very easily. It's very, very different. It's hard to, I feel, it's hard to lead in a world like that. And it's hard to like work in a world like that when you have so many things. I feel so many constraints around the other people, right? Like nobody wants to work, but also nobody wants to be given direction. Everyone wants to be a leader. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but yet nobody wants to put in the discipline, the hard work, and the effort. Have you noticed this yourself, even though you are very optimistic about people?
Of course. Of course. I mean, each generation is different. They have their advantages and disadvantages. I think the thing that sums up all of those, what I would call symptoms that you're listing, is there's a deep ingrained impatience in this younger generation that previous generations seem to have less of. You suggest to a young kid, why don't you take a gap year before college? And the thought of taking a year off, literally what the thought that goes through their mind is, no, I might, but then I'll be behind in my career.
Right.
Missing the value that you actually bring from a year off to go explore, travel, work even. Or I have to have the perfect job out of the gate and everything has to go perfectly and I have to get promoted quickly because if I don't, I'm going to be behind. And, you reaching 25, 26, 27 years old and having this quarter life crisis and panic, which, previous generations didn't really have quarter life crises, where you feel like, oh my God, what's my career? What's my life? It's like, there's this strange impatience and it probably comes from growing up in a world of instant gratification, where, years before social media, if you wanted to go on a date, first you had to meet them somewhere and you had to be like, hey,
Yes.
and like somebody had to muster up the courage to ask and somebody had to muster up the courage to go. And it took a little bit of time to get a first date. A little bit of flirting, you had to learn something.
Right. Socialization.
Where now you just swipe right and I got a date instantly. Like I'm feeling a little lazy. I'm just, there's nothing on TV. Oh, look, I got a date.
Exactly.
Right. Shopping. You just go on Amazon and it literally shows up the next day.
Or the same day.
In some cases. Even early online shopping, you'd buy something and 2 weeks later it would show up,
Totally.
And now it's the next day. And we're kind of just used to that. We're kind of used to, even information, like you're sitting at dinner, you're like, who is that actor? Hold on.
Right. Or Alexa, who is so-and-so?
Right. I have unlimited access to unlimited information.
I did that with you, by the way, not for me, but for my 9-year-old.
Oh,
yes.
Aside, I wish they would add the word please at the end of Alexa.
Yes, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Alexa, turn on the lights, please.
Yes.
Otherwise, it won't work. Different conversation.
Tell Jeff Bezos that next time you talk to him.
Please, tell Jeff to Bezos, please. Yeah. So,
by the way, have you ever talked to the Amazon? Because you talk about them all the time as an example of like a company and blah, 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 in lots of the talks you do. Did you ever do any kind of like speaking thing with them or learn?
I haven't.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or with Jeff Bezos? I'm going to write that down. Okay.
You can email Jeff.
Yeah, I'm going to.
So I think we're all products of our childhood, we're
our environment.
And our environments, we're all molded by the experiences we have and the experiences around us when we're younger, and they affect our worldview. And I think if you grow up in a world of instant gratification of get, there's very little waiting for things, even grades. You don't wait for grades. You find them out, you take a test, you find out the grade immediately.
Right.
You take a standardized test, you can log on and get the grades when you're done with the test.
Absolutely. I want to interject though. What I'm thinking more about is the fact that people's work ethic isn't high anymore. Like they want the instant gratification, but also there's a laziness that's instilled because I think because everything comes so easy, the swiping to find a date or Amazon to like, when you want to buy something, but there's also this like other like layer of just, work-life balance and this and that. And like, I know you're all about balance, so this is going to be kind of hard for me to kind of talk to you about, but like, is there such a thing when you're really trying to like build, like habits and hustle, when you're trying to build your career at the beginning and really want to strive and be successful, isn't there an imbalance just naturally?
Of course.
Right.
Of course. Okay. But balance is the wrong, balances doesn't mean even.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's not about equal, it's about equitable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. Like great relationships aren't equal, they're equitable. Right? An equal relationship is I cook, you cook. I clean, you clean. I do the dishes, you do the dishes. That's an equal relationship. An equitable relationship is I'll cook, you do the dishes. I'll put the kids to bed, you take out the garbage. That's an equitable relationship, right? We're not doing the same things. It's not equal, but it feels balanced.
Right.
And everybody's okay with the distribution of labor, right? And we have to remember that there's nothing for free. There's nothing in this world that comes for free. And everything that you get comes at a cost, always. And the only question is the cost worth it?
Right.
And so if you want to achieve, like there's people who've done extremely well, and the question is at what cost? What we're talking about is the desire to have without paying for it. Mm-hmm. Which is I want this, but I'm not willing to pay the cost, right? So for example, working really hard to get something, I want to achieve this. The cost is I'm going to have a couple sleepless nights. Mm-hmm. I'm going to work a little harder. I'm going to miss out on some social events. I might be a little bit exhausted now and then. But for me, that's worth the cost because of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so I think what we're seeing is a misunderstanding of the cost to benefit equation. And by the way, it's not for us to say whether the cost that was worth it to us is worth it to other people. Right. It may not be, right? And that's not for us to decide. I think where we do get to interject is if you want to have something like what we've done, but you aren't willing to pay any cost and make any sacrifice, that's a complicated scenario, right? Because ain't nothing for free.
100%. I'm so happy that you said that because that is 100% in my opinion, completely accurate.
But it's not for us to determine what someone's ambitions should be either. Like if somebody is totally fine,
right?
Here,
right?
And whatever here is defined as, I mean, it doesn't matter. It could be financial, it could be anything, whatever it is, right? If somebody's fine here and they don't work a lot of hours,
right?
And this is fine. And for them, this is very happy. I think that's fantastic.
Right.
I'm not telling anybody they have to live my way, your way, their way, this way, that way. I don't want to live one way either. Like I don't need max, whatever other people have because I don't want to work to that degree either. Like I accept that there's some degree of things that I can achieve because I'm just not willing to do the work.
Absolutely.
I'm okay with that.
And but you already are self-aware enough to know that about yourself.
Well, it's eyes wide open.
It's eyes wide open. But I think what you're saying is basically what I'm saying is that there is a cost. You can't have it all. If you want this, sometimes like when people say, oh, you can have this work, you can be for a woman, you could be a CEO and be a powerhouse, but also have like 3 kids and be a wonderful mom and then be an amazing wife. Like something always has to give. So like to me, that's like just being honest and being real. A
friend of mine who was a senior executive at a big company, a mom, she had kids. She told me very early on when I was, she was like my work mom, like I was entry level and she took me under her wing. She was a partner at the company. And I don't remember how the conversation came up, but I remember her telling me, she goes, any woman who decides to want a career and to be a mother, to be a working mother, has to get used to the idea that you're always going to disappoint someone. Mm-hmm. You just have to get used to it. You're either going to disappoint your company because you want to stay home with your kids, or you're going to disappoint your kids because you want to work late.
Yep.
Like you just have to get comfortable with the fact that you're always going to disappoint someone, or sometimes you disappoint yourself.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
But the point is what she was, there was another way of saying there's a cost for the choices I've made. And by the way, you can always change those choices too.
Right.
Like that's also on the table. Like none of these things are, one and done.
Right. Etched in stone.
Etched in stone.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that COVID did for a lot of us, which is we went back and reevaluated some of the choices we made and thought, ooh, I can recalibrate, And I think that's kind of what we're going through right now, which is this weird period of sort of nobody's really exactly sure how the working world is going to net out.
That's what's
and I think there's a massive recalibration happening, some of which shows up as, debate over, do we come back to work? Do we not come back to work? Is it hybrid? What does that even look like? How does that even work? What does hybrid look like? What are the rules of hybrid?
What do you think of hybrid? What do you think of all these rules? Like you go into companies talking about this all the time, right?
Yeah, it is causing a lot of stress for a lot of companies. I mean, it's, and I get asked the question all the time, which is, what are we supposed to do? And the answer is, I have no clue. The only thing I know, I think we can say for certain is that flexibility is here to stay.
Yeah.
Where it used to be, can I, you ask permission to work from home next Friday because my kids are going to be home from school. And now you can just email in the morning, say I'm working from home today and everybody's fine with it. I think that's here to stay. But the exact balance, I don't think anybody got it figured out yet. And how you enforce the balance, I don't think anybody's figured out yet. And I don't think the right balance is going to suit every company either.
Right.
I think it's going to be different, especially if you have people that have to come to work, you're in manufacturing or retail or something, and people who don't have to come to work because there's still accounting and back office in those companies.
Yeah.
Does it create a divided system of haves and have-nots? People who have agency and people who don't. That's not healthy for a culture either. So I don't think we know yet, and I think it's a bit of chaos right now, combined with the fact that many of us are, sort of going through our own recalibrations, going, what kind of life do I want? So I think it's a bit of a mess. But it's okay. It'll organize. I think chaos is great because chaos is an opportunity for creativity, right? Because without chaos, you have to break something to change something.
Right.
Now you don't have to break it. You can just change it. So I think it's a great opportunity.
You think so? Because I think that
you get to reinvent work. We get to reinvent what work is.
True, but what happens if there's so much flex. Like the pendulum has swung so far. What happened to collaboration and
it'll all suffer. This is what happens.
And socialize again. Back to the socialization piece. People are becoming like automatons. Like what do they call
automaton?
Yes, automatons.
Robots.
Yes, because everything is like a screen or this. Like we now don't even know like what people even really look like in real life.
We definitely don't know how tall they are.
Yeah, we definitely don't know that. Nice. What do you call it?
We had somebody on our team that was hired during COVID, and I'd never met her until, a year into working with us.
Right.
And when I met her, she's 6'1". I was like, what the? Like, I had no idea. Like, we're always the same height when I look at you on the screen.
Exactly.
So you're right. The pendulum did swing the other way, but that's what happens.
Yes.
It's a reaction. There's a cost for that reaction, and it'll come back. That's why I say it's a sort of a chaotic time.
Okay.
But I think that, we can whine about it, or we can say, okay, how can we have some say of what it could be? And let's have those conversations out loud. Let's talk about the costs. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Like, yes, it's great to have flexibility to work from whenever you want, but it does damage collaboration and brainstorming. Like, creativity is going to go down because everybody's so excessively polite on Zoom and they mute themselves when they're not speaking. And if you've ever had a brainstorming meeting, that's not how it is. It's messy and noisy and you interrupt each other and nobody's offended when you interrupt each other. And you're like, oh, I have an idea. And that's what produces great brainstorming.
Totally.
So, I've started it doesn't work with big meetings, but I've started doing it with small meetings where I make everybody keep their microphones on. And I encourage just speaking out like it's a real meeting. Which it does help. It does help.
But not the same as being in person.
Of course not. You and I talking over a Zoom would not feel
exactly
like this.
You can't create human connection when there's a screen in front of you.
But I think we all know that. Like that's not the news. I think the news is, well, okay, what are we going to do?
Right.
And, some people are saying, well, I don't care about that because I value my freedom and I value my this and I value where I want to live. And, it's sort of like, I think if anything, there's sort of a weird selfishness to it all, you know? And it goes back to what we're saying, which is I want everything. I want my cake and I want to eat it and I want everything and everything's going to go my way. And, you know, having it my way is a very noble aspiration, just unrealistic.
Right.
You know, it's like you have kids, you love to get all your sleep. You know, it's like, it's not how it works.
Right.
And it goes back to what we were just saying a minute ago, which is there's a cost for everything. And, but that's okay. I think those lessons will be learned. You know, I said some things ago. I said things on another podcast recently that when I read the comments, like people were like lashing out, which I thought was so fascinating.
What did you say?
So I basically talked about how it skews younger. It's not completely, but it skews younger. Have become very comfortable quitting. It's become normalized. Where when you and I were younger, even if you didn't like your job, you had to stay for at least a year because otherwise you destroy your resume.
Totally.
Right? It is what it is. Like you just had to suck it up for a year. Right?
By the way, I saw you talk about that on something, and I was that's one of the things I was like, oh my God, exactly. That's so true.
And this is what I talked about, and I talked about how where quitting has become so normalized that there's a lot of people, skews younger, who quit very quickly. You know, after 3 months or 4 months, maybe they're having a bad week, or they're confrontation avoidant and don't want to ask for a raise, so it's just easier to quit. Or maybe they got in trouble and they're like, you know, fuck my boss, and like I'm going to quit. And, okay, you know, and so you know, what ends up happening is flash forward 5 years, there's going to be a portion of the workforce that over the course of 5 years has had 9 or 10 jobs. And any employer is going to look at a resume and be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take you're so smart, you're brilliant, but I can't take the risk, you know? Or they have been in the workforce for 5 years, but they've only really had about 7 months of work experience because they keep starting again and they know what it's like to work in calm waters, but they have yet to really sit through and weather a storm, you know, because going through a hard time, whether you're having a hard time at work or whether the company's having a hard time, like you learn skills in that are valuable to companies. And by the way, they're valuable to you. Right. And so, and I said these things and I couldn't believe the backlash, you know, in the comments.
Like what?
Well, you know, that I was speaking from the point of an employer and, you know, that's about exploitation. And I'm like, I'm not, and I think there's a sort of a misunderstanding and a quick to judge. Like I have no judgment in what I'm saying. It's an observation. It's an observation that younger people generally are more comfortable quitting more quickly. Right. And if we go back to, again, this is going to be our recurring theme. What's the cost of that? Yes. You're like, yes, it has benefits. Absolutely. Why should you put up with a job you don't like? Get out of there. Sure. Absolutely. You know, yes, your boss is not the world's most fantastic leader, not a bad person, but not a great leader. Sure. Get out of there. You know, it sounds great, but there's a cost. And I'm not sure those costs are being weighed, but there will be an accounting in 5 years. And that's all I'm saying, which is just be aware. Just go in with eyes wide open. Think of the long game. You can still make the decision. I'm not saying make or don't make the decision. I'm saying be cognizant of the long game, you know? And people, see, to me, that is so absurd. That's how you build, like, do hard things is how you build resilience and mental toughness. And I'm not asking anybody to, endure toxicity, you know? Of course not. I do, but don't you do things like, do you think I want to work out every single day and like grind on that out? No, but if I see the results that I get at the end of the day or the end of the year or whatever we're saying, you put up with the stuff that you don't want to do for the long-term gain of what you can get. That there is an equation. Right. And as I said, I think that when we think of equations, we think of the short-term benefit. Yes. And that's fine. There's always short-term benefits and liabilities. There's no problem with that. But we also have to consider the long-term benefits and liabilities, especially it's in if we consider relationships or careers or, you know, life. You know, these things are not they're not finite games.
Right. Which is,
they keep going, and to think about them as sort of these, I don't know what the word is, these unique experiences that don't exist in any context.
there's
a word for it. I can't remember what it is. But when you think of these events as discrete packets that have no consequences before or after, that there's no context.
Right.
I think it's just blind. I mean, of course there's context. There's context for everything.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
But what's the, like, I think I saw something you're talking about, like, was it like self-actualization versus shared actualization, right?
Yeah.
Because we're living in a time, everyone wants to be self-actualized.
Yeah.
And we're saying that people now, it's like a very selfish, me oriented world, right? Yeah. What did you mean by shared? Like, can you explain that a little bit? Yeah.
I mean, I think that especially the United States over-indexed on the concept of rugged individualism.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it play out in how we, what our guidance counselors tell us, what our bosses tell us, the incentive structures and reward systems in our universities and in our businesses, which is, it's all individual performance.
Right.
And we pay little to no consideration to teamwork, or did you serve the team or did you serve yourself? And that has cost,
right,
to the team. It basically goes to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is where the self-actualization came from.
That's the top of his.
I think Maslow was wrong, right? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base of the pyramid is food and shelter. That you need that first, and the third rung up is human relationships, and at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. So you're supposed to work your way up the hierarchy of needs until you can get to self-actualization. And what Maslow's mistake is that he only thinks of us as individuals, but what he fails to consider is that we're also simultaneously members of groups. Every single one of us, every single day, lives in paradox. We are individuals. I want my own identity. I want my own individuality. I want to self-express. All of those things, all true. And simultaneously, I'm a member of a family. I'm a member of a church. I'm a member of a team. I'm a member of a company. I'm a member of a synagogue, whatever.
Yeah.
Like I have membership, and I have responsibility in the group.
Right.
And there's a debate. Do I put myself first at the sacrifice of the group, or do I put the group first at the sacrifice of myself? And and some will say, there's a whole school of thought that says you always prioritize yourself, because if you don't help yourself, you can't help others. And they always give the same stupid analogy, which is when you're on a plane, you put your mask on before you can help somebody else. That's a crashing plane. Not a good analogy, right? That's a crashing plane with no air in it.
Right.
Correct. You have to put yourself first. Correct. Right. That's not a good analogy for life.
Right.
But then there's a school of thought that says, no, you have to help others always first. Otherwise, the group will never be there to help you. But that's martyrdom. And sometimes you get to it to a point where you actually do destroy yourself because you're trying so hard to help everybody else and put everybody else first.
Right.
The answer is both. It's a paradox. It's complicated. And so where Maslow got it wrong is he failed to consider us as members of groups, which is why he put food and shelter first, which is true as an individual. But I've never heard of anybody dying by suicide because they were hungry.
Right.
You die by suicide because you're lonely, which is the third thing up, but it seems more important than food, right? And so how selfish is it that we work to self-actualization and we metaphorically, literally sit on, not literally and metaphorically, but metaphorically sit on top of a pyramid looking down at all the unself-actualized people? How selfish that we live a life so that we can get to the top of a pyramid, as opposed to shared actualization. Like, how do we take as many people with us to find joy, love, fulfillment, safety? Come, let's go on that journey together to the top of the pyramid. Is that not my responsibility as a member of the group? To take as many people with me as possible, to look out for them, to take care of the weak ones and not let the strong ones get too ahead of themselves because we're a part of a team. Oh, by the way, the thing that I'm describing is called leadership. Mm-hmm. But isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? We have an entire section in the bookshop called self-help, and we have no section in the bookshop called help others. And we have entire industries that are literally telling us how we can find happiness, how we can find love, how we can find the perfect job. And yet no one is teaching us how we can help our friends find love, and how we can help our friends find the job of their dreams, and how we can help our friends find happiness. And that is a skill set equal to the skill set of helping oneself. They have they both have value. I'm not rejecting taking care of oneself, but I'm telling you that there's also another part of this equation. And I think that we've overdone this one, and you see it reflected now. Even the way we've commercialized and we've miraculously made things like meditation and yoga selfish, right? How can I love it. I feel so present, right? It's like I feel present. Now, yes, there are absolutely benefits to meditation. We know the benefits of taking care of oneself and finding that mindfulness, right? We know all those social and medical benefits. But the reason we practice meditation, and think about it, meditation is you sit still, you focus on one thing, whether it's a mantra or your breath or whatever it is, and you put everything else out of your mind. And if you have a thought, you label it a thought and you say, I'll deal with that later. And you find this incredible calm and peacefulness that comes. The reason we call it a practice is so you can practice it for others, not just for yourself. Yes, we know the benefits to you. Have you ever taken that practice and given it to others? So when they're sitting there telling you their problems, that you're not just thinking of the thing that you want to say next. You're not just thinking how you can fix their problems. Or they tell you about their great day and you interrupt them and tell them about your great day. But rather because you've been practicing this mindfulness, that you can sit completely quietly, focused on one thing and one thing only is what they're telling you. And if something goes bang over there, you actually don't turn your head because you're so focused. And you have a thought and you label it a thought and you put it out of your mind and say, I'll deal with it later because right now I'm focused on the person I'm with. And at the end of that interaction, you will know you were present when they tell you you were. We are not present until someone tells us we are present. And they will say things like, thank you for listening. They will say things like, I feel heard. They will say, thank you for being present with me, holding space for me. Congratulations, all that hard work you've been doing meditating was now also for the benefit of another. And what we also know is that the medical science on this, for all the benefits of mindfulness for oneself, are multiplied by 10 when you do it for someone else.
By 10?
Service. Omar Brownson talks about this. He specializes in gratitude.
Right. Yes.
And he talks about the difference. The way he labels it is mindfulness versus heartfulness. And he and I talked about how mindfulness is about me and I'm in my head, but heartfulness is about someone else, right? And he has the data that there's 10x medical benefit to the service of mindfulness rather than the taking of mindfulness. It has benefit. And I'm not saying not do this. I'm saying also do this, I know the study you're talking about. It's actually it's in this book that I just wrote, but it's about I say not service. I say the word gratitude because people think that if they journal in they journal that's having gratitude, but it's actually the act of like telling somebody thank you or sort of like basically turning it on its head to somebody else. The effects are like tenfold, which is I think the same thing. And in our fast-paced, social media world, I think we've conflated some of these human practices, and we've sort of mixed them up a little bit. One of my favorites is people who put these beautiful posts on Instagram with them as babies being held by their dad, and it says "Happy Birthday, Dad" or "Happy Father's Day, Dad." Your dad's not on Instagram. Like, who are you telling? Like, your dad? What did you call your dad? Totally happy. You're the best sister. Happy Siblings Day. Did you call your sibling? I find that funny.
I find it so phony and bullshit is what I call it.
Or that we talk about vulnerability when, you talk about your breakup or the hard thing you're going through and you're sitting by yourself in your room talking to your phone. By the way, that may not be the first take. And it might be the fourth take that I'm doing this because it was sort of the lighting was bad. And I put that on TikTok. Preach. I put that on TikTok and I say, vulnerability for everyone to learn from. That's not vulnerability, that's broadcasting. Now go say those exact words to a person, which is way more difficult. And I think for us to practice true vulnerability, which is to sit with somebody, whether in pain or joy, which is to sit across from them, or to the very minimum, pick up the telephone versus a text and say, I just want you to know I love you and I care about you. And you are one of my best friends. and I will be there for you in thick and thin no matter what. And I know that you would be there for me. And I just want you to know how grateful I am for this friendship and for you, right? Do that to somebody. Or sit in pain with them and saying, I'm struggling. You and I have had a fight and I'm up every night because of it. It hurts me. And I don't know where it came from. The words you said to me the other day hurt me like a knife, right? Go say that to the person as opposed to broadcasting it. Because that doesn't actually, it gives you a salve. It makes you feel a little bit better for the few minutes you've done it.
Does it? Or is it more for the other people on social media?
It has to have some benefit
to get
to
a like
oneself.
Or a follow.
I mean, that would be really cynical of us to say. But I have to believe it has some benefit.
You're the optimist. I never said I was.
Fair. I'm still cynical though.
Yeah.
Of course there's some benefit, but the problem is it's a short-term benefit. Whereas you and I both know that to get in the shit with someone, professionally, personally, to get in the shit with someone, almost always you come out with clarity, better understanding, and usually a much better relationship.
Totally.
Almost always. Struggle is some of the best thing that can happen in a relationship. Shared hardship actually releases oxytocin in our bodies. Everybody's all about dopamine and oxytocin. And oxytocin comes from many, many reasons. Some healthy, some not healthy. But one of the healthy ways that we get oxytocin is shared hardship. Have somebody go take some Marines and put them in combat together. Mm-hmm. Those Marines will come back in love with each other. They will love each other.
It's shared experience.
Shared hardship in particular. Shared hardship, shared struggle actually create strong bonds. If there's a hurricane that comes through, all of a sudden who you voted for doesn't matter at all. Mm-hmm. I got you, right? I got you.
I totally agree. I mean, how much time do you spend on social media? You have a lot of followers and all that other jazz. Are you constantly looking at your phone? Are you constantly doing all that stuff? Like, what's your ratio?
Well, I mean, I have all my notifications turned off on my telephone, except for texts and phone calls. I get 0 notifications if I got an email. I get 0 notifications if anybody posted or liked or anything on any social media ever, right? So I don't have that dopamine, ding, ding, ding. I don't have it. But like anyone, I can go down a rabbit hole. If I'm feeling a little bit down or lonely, of course I go swiping for goodness. And my goodness, the algorithm on TikTok.
Oh my.
I'll just spend 10 minutes and 2 hours later.
Tell me about that. To me is
there's some funny, talented, entertaining people out there.
Amazing.
And they're brilliant and wonderful. And that algorithm is astonishing.
It is astonishing.
It is astonishing. Yeah. It is astonishing how good it is and how it just feeds me everything I want to see better than anything else. But I'm also fully aware, I can't do it that often. I know that if I open that TikTok app, I am fully aware that I am not in control of myself.
100.
I am fully aware that time will evaporate. And I know that I'm going to sit in bed and then all of a sudden I'm going to stop because I'm falling asleep and I realize it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Totally.
So I know not to turn the app on, but I would say that my social media interaction is mostly healthy only because I have all the notifications turned off. So right. I don't even the buttons, the count of how many emails you have. I have none on the little envelope on my phone.
Gosh, you're
it's blank.
Yeah,
it's blank. Good. Not because I don't have emails. It's because I only find out if I'm I think I'll check my email now, open up the email app and I see all the new emails.
Oh, good.
So I don't have notifications turned on anything.
So you basically controlled your environment that way. So you know that you have you're taking away the ability to kind of go down those things.
And my phone is always, the ringer is always turned off. It doesn't even vibrate. So I literally don't know if anything's coming in unless I pick it up to look. So I don't have that dopamine thing. I make a practice of when I'm out with friends that I put my phone on a different seat. I don't put it on a table. I put it out of reach. I can't see it on purpose.
On purpose,
because I understand the addictive qualities of the device. And so, it's like the first thing you do with an alcoholic is you take all the alcohol out of the house because we just don't have that kind of willpower. It's not because they're weak. It's because none of us have that kind of willpower to resist. And so to think that we're so strong that we can resist the dopamine powers of our cell phones and social media is just wrong.
Right.
So I put it out of sight.
That's a good idea.
Or sometimes give it to my friend. I'm like, can you carry my phone for me? I do that a lot.
That's a great idea. Just because it's like, because we're living in that kind of world now, that's why I don't know how we always find like, the pendulum swings, but because we're getting more and more addicted because there's more platforms, like every day there's a new platform that comes up and a new thing that happens. Where do we come back to a place where we're like, kind of like we're, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have this type of like same addiction where there wasn't social media.
Well, there were other things to get addicted to.
What were we addicted to?
Alcohol.
True. People are still doing that. The fentanyl is being sold right now.
It's true. It's true. I'm just saying it's not like the world was so, let's not be Pollyannish that the world was perfect and nobody had any addictions.
No.
But you're right. The amount of, I think, I can't remember the statistic I just read recently. Was it deaths by alcohol or just, we all know the amount of drinking that went up during COVID skyrocketed.
Oh.
But I think deaths by alcohol have also gone up.
Did yours? Like, did
I die from alcohol?
No. And from COVID, did you tweak or modify your habits or your life at all? Like at all? Or
I don't know how to answer that question because I think all of our lives were tweaked and modified.
No. But like now that we've kind of come out the other end or the other way.
Oh, has anything remained?
Yeah. Like what have you done? Like did you kind of increase your fitness level? Did you stop working as much? Like what's your I want to know what you do every single day. I want to know what time you wake up, how you wake up, what you eat, what you don't eat.
So one of the magical things that happened during COVID was my niece and nephew were little kids that I saw 2 or 3 times a month. And then I went to having family dinner with them every single night, And so my sister's family and I, we were back and forwards between our 2 homes. And we had family dinner every single night. Every family had family dinner every single night.
Oh, you mean during COVID you did that?
During COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved it.
Aww.
And we have tried as a family to preserve that as much as possible, where we have Friday night sushi night, for example. As there's occasional exceptions where, they have a game or I'm traveling. But for the most part, that Friday night sushi night is sacred. I won't make plans because I got to have dinner with the kids. And I really like it. So I've tried to cling on to some of those things. It waxes and wanes. But I've tried to maintain a better balance of travel, being away because family has become more important. It's always been important, but being present for family.
Mm-hmm. When you say family, your sister, your kid,
my niece and nephew,
niece and nephew. Okay, I got to ask you a bunch of like leadership questions because I have a bunch. What are the 2 most powerful success habits people should cultivate in order to go get ahead in life?
Good question. Number 1 is curiosity. The very difficult thing of replacing judgment with curiosity makes for good leadership. Curiosity also leads to humility. The best definition of humility I ever heard was from a guy named Bob Gaylor, who said, "Don't confuse humility for meekness." He says, humility is being open to the ideas of others. You can have a big ego, but you can still be like, all right, let's hear your idea, as opposed to just shooting the idea down.
Right.
You don't have to agree with it, but you can be curious about it. So I think learning to replace curiosity, judgment with curiosity, and practicing curiosity keeps you humble. You don't have all the best ideas, for example. Other people are smart too.
Right.
I think is one. And the other one is the equally difficult practice to learn to say, I don't know, or I need help. I think are absolutely essential.
You said, you talk about this a lot, about empathy, power of empathy, and that's like a key component for leadership.
Yeah.
And that you've noticed that most powerful leaders have this.
Well,
the good ones.
The good ones. There's a lot of powerful leaders.
I was going to say that word was not the right word. It's mostly the good ones. Can you teach empathy, or can someone learn to be more empathetic?
Sure. Absolutely. 100%. It is a practice. It is a skill, like so many others.
Right.
I think empathy, again, starts with curiosity.
Yeah.
If somebody's underperforming, instead of labeling them stupid or lazy or unmotivated or snowflakes, to ask the question, I wonder what's going on in their life. I hope they're okay. That's empathy. And then to actually say to them, are you okay? You know, negative narratives are, they're dangerous at every level of a company. Sometimes,
right.
Rank and file will start a narrative about leadership. They're assholes. They don't care. And sometimes leadership starts a narrative about an employee. They're stupid. They're lazy. And the problem is that'll affect how we treat each other. And we'll start looking for evidence to validate our narratives.
Yeah.
It's very easy to interrupt. You simply say, I wonder what else it could be. And it's important for, if you're with a team and you start shitting on leadership, somebody could say, I wonder what else it could be. Maybe they're under stress, or maybe we don't know what's going on, And same thing with leadership, which is one in a group that somebody starts labeling somebody, or even if you're doing it by yourself, you say, I wonder what else it could be. I wonder what else is going on in their life. And you can make a list. So they're lazy. That's still on the list. That could be it. Sure.
Okay.
Or maybe there's something going on in their personal life that we don't know about. Maybe there's some family drama that they're dealing with that we don't know about. Maybe we've given them too much work. Maybe they're overworked and burnt out. Maybe they're undertrained and they don't know what they're doing. And we have a culture where it's too difficult to ask for help. Like, it could be 50 things. It could still be the one that you think, but it could be other things too. And the point is now when you talk to that person, you're operating with empathy. You're operating with curiosity. So yeah, of course it's practicable. Yeah.
It's
and learnable. Yeah. And you get better at it, like anything. You do it more, it becomes second nature.
Right.
But
I feel when people are leading, I think you talk about this too. Like, there are people who are leaders and people who lead. And there's a big difference between the two, right? Can someone learn to be a good leader? Because I feel like, you talk about, let's talk about Elon Musk, for example, right? He's like a very powerful man, obviously. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't think he would be considered a great leader, but everybody does want to work with him and be there and be around. Mm-hmm. People like to be around successful people. That's like human nature. So then how is it that when I think you talk a lot about, if you have a why, obviously that's your whole thing, mm-hmm. That's when people work harder, when they want to, that's when an organization does exceptionally well. Mm-hmm. Do you think that SpaceX or even Amazon or any of these people, like that, I can't imagine those leaders having that type of, I guess they do have the vision, but they're not exactly necessarily great leaders. I guess there is my own question.
Yeah. We can talk about, leadership has nothing to do with personality.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, not the nicest guy in the world.
Right.
But you talk to people who worked there during the Steve Jobs days, that he pushed them to do the best work of their lives.
Right.
People would show up with their fancy resumes of wherever else they worked and be like, well, I built this and I invented that. And, they would say the same thing, which is, we don't care what you've done. We care what you're going to do.
Right.
And so for people who like to be pushed to do better work, they loved working there.
Right.
It's not, it goes back to, do we share the same beliefs, which is, that culture is not for everyone. And by the way, Steve Jobs invented a total of 0 of the products that Apple made. He came up with none of them, right? The ideas for those products came from within the teams. So he's not the genius because he came up with all the ideas. He was the genius because he pushed people to come up with ideas and he knew how to contextualize them and share them with the world.
Right.
He understood that he understood what good looked like. So was he the nicest guy in the world? No. Was he a great leader? Yeah. For heaven's sakes, after a multi-billionaire died who flies in private jets everywhere he goes, he cannot relate to our lives. We cannot relate to his life. After he died, people laid flowers at a retail store to mourn the loss of a CEO. Like, just think about that for just
crazy,
1 minute.
I know.
Right? And that can only happen if someone gives us something to believe in, if somebody gave us something to feel a part of, whether you're an employee or a customer, or a spectator.
Right.
So the evidence is demonstrated by the fact that he gave people something to stand for, right?
Yeah.
Or to belong to. What very often happens to a lot of leaders is sometimes they start to believe their own press. They start to believe that because they've had a string of success, that everything they do will be successful. It was described to me recently by a friend that you have a bag of balls, of equal number of red balls and blue balls. I would change that one. Let's go with red balls and green balls.
Okay. I love it.
You have a dirty mind.
Yeah.
So red balls and green balls.
I love
Very cool. We'll stay Christmas oriented. Red balls and green balls. And you put your hand in and you pull out a red ball, and you pull your hand in and you pull out a red ball, and you pull out your hand and you put that 8 red balls in a row.
Okay.
And you're just like, I'm a freaking star. I'm like the red ball pro. Except the opportunity for failure, the opportunity for pulling at the other cup now have gone up. The odds, because it's equal number, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of life, which is these folks have had massive success. They keep pulling. What they're failing to recognize is failure could be the next pull.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, the good ones surround themselves with teams of rivals, people who disagree with them. And the ones who start to believe they're unhype and have gone off the deep end surround themselves with people who only agree with them, or only people who agree with them, validating their genius every day. And that doesn't work well for the long term.
It doesn't work well. You said the word rival, not in the same way, but in your, I guess this was written a few years ago, The Infinite Game, but you do talk about worthy rivals. Yeah. Who is your worthy rival?
I mean, I have a bunch, worthy rivals. So let's define what a worthy rival is first.
Yes.
I know the story you want me to tell. So there is another author who does what I do. He writes books, he gives talks, he's extremely smart. And, I hate him.
Would you say that?
My hatred for him is completely irrational. I'm aware of that. He's always been very civil to me when I've seen him at events, and very kind. He never done anything to hurt me that I know of. He's a good guy. I just have irrational hatred. And as a result of my contempt, I'm very, very, very competitive with him. So I will regularly go on Amazon and look at his book ranking, and then I'll immediately look at my book ranking. And if he's ahead, I'm angry. And if I'm ahead, I'm smug. Mind you, I check no one else's rankings. It's like as if there's only 2 people writing books. I check no one else's rankings, just his.
Right.
I'm competitive with him. We had the opportunity to speak at the same event, and I don't mean like me in the morning, him in the afternoon. I mean like we were going to be on the stage at the same time, we're going to be interviewed. And the interviewer thought it would be fun if we introduced each other. And I went first. And I turned to him and I said, you make me really insecure. All of your strengths are all of my weaknesses. And whenever your name comes up, I get really uncomfortable. And he turned to me and he said, funny, I feel the same about you. The reason I was so competitive with him and the reason I had this irrational contempt had nothing to do with him. It had to do with me. Because his strengths show me my weaknesses, it's too difficult to look at myself and say that I'm weak here. And it's much easier to say I hate him and I'm going to beat him, right? Now, the funny thing is after that experience, there was a total catharsis. All of that negativity, all of that competitive spirit completely went away. And he and I are now friends and regularly, promote each other and help each other.
Just hang out together?
We live in different cities, but yeah, if we're in the same place, we'll definitely hang out together. And this is what worthy rivals are. Worthy rivals are other players in the game whose strengths reveal to your weaknesses. And instead of trying to compete against them because you can't beat them, there's no such thing as winning in this game. Like, what am I? There's like, what? I sell more books. Am I the winner? No.
Right. It
means nothing. I pick an arbitrary thing. What if it's social media following? Like, it could be anything. What if it's
you're winning anyway?
Like who knows? Like, I mean, like the point is it's stupid and arbitrary.
Right. It is arbitrary.
He makes 10 times more money than me. Am I winning or losing? Like who the hell knows? What's your metric? Right? It's stupid. The point is the comparisons are stupid, right? But what is valuable is that when you pick players who are better at one or many things than you are, that because their strengths reveal to your weaknesses, the opportunity is to either work on those weaknesses to get better, to become a better player yourself, or to partner with them. Because then those strengths and those weaknesses balance each other off. They negate each other. And so I'm not competitive. I have no competitors, but I definitely have worthy rivals. People who are really good at what they do, and I have such love and admiration for them. And I used to get insecure about it, but now I'm grateful because it helps me be a better player. So I'm a great believer in worthy rivals. And the same goes for companies, by the way. For companies to compare themselves to each other and say, we're better. Based on what? Revenues, profit, market share, number of employees? Like based on what? Like based on what time frame? This year total, the next 10 years? Like it's all arbitrary and nonsense.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that most companies are taken down not by the competitor they're obsessed with, but the one they didn't know of, right? You think MySpace even had any idea that Facebook even existed? It doesn't happen. You think the big TV studios and movie studios were paying any attention to Netflix?
Exactly.
You think the big 3 car companies were worried about what Tesla was going to do to upset their marketplace? Like nobody's looking at the upstarts. They're looking at each other. So further reinforcing the folly of arbitrary competition in business or in life or, in any sort of these infinite games. So yeah, I'm a great believer in worthy rivals. We should have them because it makes us better.
So is this person still your worthy? Since you kind of had this catharsis, do you have some?
He was my competitor before.
Right.
Now he's my worthy rival.
No, he's your, okay.
Now I have absolute respect for him and there are things that he does. I'm like, ugh, I could do better. But I have many.
Do you have a competitor now that you look at?
I have no competitors.
All worthy rivals.
I have many worthy rivals who sometimes they're better at this one thing, or they're better at these 2 things, or they're better at those things. And even when we do something at our company, like when we are going to come up with anything, like we're going to redo our website, like it'd be something mundane. We'd be like, okay, who are the worthy rivals? Like who's doing it really well that we want to learn from, So we always say, can somebody worthy rival this? Go find somebody who's doing it better than we are.
Right.
So we can learn. We do it all the time.
I do think it's a healthy way to kind of keep yourself on your toes in a way without. Yeah, of
course.
It's like I still call it healthy competition though. Worthy why,
Problem is it has the word competition.
Yeah, you don't like the word competition.
It's like if you have a mild melanoma or if you have stage 4 liver cancer, those things are both called cancer, but they're clearly not the same thing.
Absolutely.
And so if you use the same word, the problem is it means the same thing. So, so I don't like saying healthy competition because it's not competition.
Right. You don't like the word competition.
The word competition sets up a false game that this is a finite game of winners and losers. A competitor is someone to beat, right?
That's right.
A competition has a winner and a loser. So let's not use those words because they're actually incorrect. There's no winning business. It doesn't exist. There's no winning healthcare. It doesn't exist. Nobody's declared the winner of career. It doesn't exist.
Right.
You're ahead or behind, but no one's ever the winner.
Right. So give me a couple other things that make someone a really strong, good leader besides empathy, curious. Is there anything else that people can work on that they can kind of help, like people who are listening, who are entrepreneurs, who are now starting to lead a team of some kind? Anything else that you would think that would help people in that type of new position?
Or in somebody who's not new to the position. There's a concept that has been lost in our modern society, and that is the concept of honor. We don't talk about honor anymore. Honor is nothing to do with trustworthiness or reliability or intelligence. It's something very different, right? So an example of honor is when someone takes advantage of, maybe you've had a string of bad luck. Mm-hmm. Let's say you've lost a bunch of clients and you're going through a really hard time and you need all the help that you can find. And somebody on your team comes to you and says, I want to renegotiate my contract because somebody gave them some bad advice that you've got all the cards, you've got all the leverage, you should use it. So taking advantage when someone is hurting for self-gain is dishonorable. That person may be smart. That person may be very trustworthy. That person may be reliable, but they are not honorable. Honor is about ethics, right? And too often the standard these days is the law. It's like, I didn't break any laws. Like, a pharmaceutical company that raises the price of an essential drug 1,000%, 1,500%.
Yes.
It's not illegal. It is not illegal, but it is unethical. It is dishonorable. And I, for one, only want to work with people who have honor, who understand that I'd rather lose money in the short term and do the right thing than make money unethically, or to act selfishly and take advantage of someone's pain or someone's disadvantage. That is dishonorable. And I choose to build my business and be around people who are honorable. And I think we need honor back in business. I think it's gone missing for a while.
Like that.
Because it's all become so selfishly driven.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So honor is the opposite of selfishness.
It is. Would honor be like integrity too? Would that
I think honor includes integrity. I think you have to have, it's a component of, right? Again, that person may have integrity until they decide to put themselves first. You know, are they out of integrity because they have all the leverage, quote unquote, you know? So I think I call it honor because that's what it is. It is. So yeah, I think absolutely honor includes integrity. Absolutely.
One thing you said, I'm sure you've heard, everyone always probably says this too, the line about how to motivate people is like you can either inspire them or you can manipulate them. Is it like something like that?
Yeah. There's two ways to motivate people. You can manipulate them or you can inspire them.
Right.
Manipulation is easier, and it's usually more immediate, the impact. And so we tend to rely on it. We see it in business all the time. You know, we attempt to coerce people with promotions, right? Mm-hmm. Buy one, get one free.
Right.
Well, that's a manipulation, right? Oh, I don't really want it, but getting this next one free, you know? We use fear, right?
Right.
Your children will die from drinking tap water. Tune in at 11, right?
Right.
If you vote for the other party, crime will go up, you know?
Right.
It's like those are
fear-based.
It's fear-based. It works really well. Even aspirational messages, you know, every gym membership that has ever been sold is look what you could look like,
right.
You know? And some of them are funny and some of them are, you know, pretty unethical, but the point is manipulations work. They work in the short term. They become too expensive and too exhausting over the long term. They actually do not work over the long term. The opposite is inspiration. It's harder, takes more work. There are sometimes short-term gains, but really you're doing it for long-term. And when you inspire people, you get loyalty, you get trust, you get those kinds of things, which the other manipulations do not build at all.
Can you name somebody, a leader that you've seen that does this very well, who you think is a really good, strong,
inspiring leader?
Inspiring leader, yeah.
Oh, sure. Gary Ridge, who just recently retired, CEO from WD-40. Honorable guy. I know, WD-40, exactly. Barry Waymiller is the company. Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Waymiller, super honorable, super inspiring, also lives with cause, you know. There are lots of good examples of people who are not famous.
I was going to say they're not social media.
They're generally not on social media, but they are honorable and they give their people something to believe in, and they care about their people and they view their people as human beings, and they recognize that they, as leaders, have the responsibility to see those around them rise. They embrace that awesome responsibility. That's what makes them great leaders.
So I want to, a few more minutes, and I know you've been super generous with your time. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I have no idea what time it is.
I don't know if
I have been generous or not.
Yeah, to be honest, neither do I. I have no idea. I think it's been, I have no idea. How long? An hour and a half. So yeah, I guess it's been probably longer than you were anticipating. What I was going to say.
I got free water. So
you do. And believe me, you can get way more. There's way more where that came from. And I have snacks, I told you. Do you want a snack? No? You're still
I'll
okay?
have a snack afterwards. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes. I've got some healthy ones for you. Some of these things, when I was going down the rabbit hole with you, which I have before, not just yesterday or the day before, there are all these like little rules of success that I've seen you do in all these different montages like that are on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And a few of them these are the ones I really love. You say, be the last to speak. Mm-hmm. I love that. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah, that's a story about, that comes from a story about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is a very important leader because different leaders are viewed differently depending on where you go. Mm-hmm. But Nelson Mandela is universally regarded as a great leader no matter where you go.
That's true.
And he was asked by a journalist once, how did you learn to be a great leader? And he told the story of when he was a boy. He was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he said he remembered going to tribal meetings with his father, and he remembers two things. One, they always sat in a circle, and two, his father was always the last to speak. And if you think about it, even well-intentioned leaders, we come in and we sit at the head of the table, mm-hmm. you know, and we say to the team, okay, here's the problem we have. This is what I think we should do, but I want to know what you think. Too late. You've biased the room, or you've made people feel like their opinion doesn't matter, as opposed to sitting down and saying, here's the problem. I want to know what you think. And then being good at having a poker face. You can ask questions, but not giving away if you agree or disagree. And at the end, you can have the exact same opinion as you came in with, but two things happen. A, you actually get the benefit of more input.
Right.
So you actually may change your point of view, and other people feel like they could contribute. Ever feel like they were contributing because they were.
Right.
So yeah, it is a fantastic practice to literally practice being the last to speak.
I love that one. And it's such a good, I think that's such a great one. Outdo yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the only true competitor in the infinite game is yourself. It doesn't matter if you beat another player in the game. The question is, are you outdoing yourself? It's compare it to I get a kick out of the Olympics, right? So these are the most elite athletes in the world.
Yep.
And maybe let's say there's a skier, an ice skater, and they got the gold medal. But if you go look at their routine, they fell. But it just so happened that the person who got silver fell twice, right? So
right.
Are they the best, skier, ice skater, or whatever, in the world? No, in this competition, they were better than that person that day.
Yep.
Right. And so I think and that's a finite game. There's a beginning, middle, and end to that game. It's an actual competition. In our careers, there's no beginning, middle, and end until you reach the end of your career, and then you don't win career. You didn't,
right.
And so the goal is not to try and outdo other people. The goal is to try to outdo yourself. How am I a better leader, a better follower? And by the way, the best leaders are the best followers. All the best leaders that I've ever met believe that they're in service to something even bigger than themselves. The best leaders are the best followers. They don't believe that the buck stops here. Even the Pope is in service to something bigger than himself. He's not actually the end all being. The best leaders, and even the ones I mentioned, Gary Ridge and Bob Chapman, both of them believe there's a higher calling. Both of them believe they're in service to something even bigger, even if it's just looking after people and making them feel like they belong.
Right.
So I don't use the term follower and leader as a hierarchy, right? Because leaders can happen at every point of an organization. At the top of the organization, you better be a follower.
That's great.
But yeah,
I've never heard anyone say that, actually.
That's true.
Yeah, but it's true. Yeah.
And so I think that's true, which is the game that we're in is to outdo ourselves. And we wish everybody else the best of luck. Remember, two people can both be wildly successful in their careers simultaneously. In business, two companies who sell the same thing for about the same product, about the same price, about the same quality, can both be wildly successful simultaneously. There is no winner. It's a joke. It's a false construction. And so why not make our products, our service, our work better than we were yesterday? That's the goal.
I think you talked about this in a lot of your speeches, actually, about when you walk into Apple, or I don't know if you actually did, or when it was Microsoft, and people either focused on what the competition was doing, and that kind of derailed their business, versus focusing on themselves and making their thinking what they're doing, how they can be better, how they can.
Back in the Steve Ballmer days, Steve Ballmer was obsessed with beating Apple.
Right.
And he sort of very publicly said, and pushed his people to make a better iPod. We're going to make we're going to beat Apple at their iPod. And Apple wasn't competing against Microsoft. They didn't care. They're outdoing themselves. And so congratulations. It's true. At some point, arguably, Microsoft's Zune actually was better than Apple's iPod, but for the fact that a couple years later, Apple invented the iPhone.
That's right.
Rendering both the iPod and the Zune completely obsolete. So it makes no sense to try and make a better product if your competition's not even playing the same game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. The stack the deck to your favor.
Yeah. Yes. So the best way to understand that is I don't believe in the concept of strengths and weaknesses. Everything has context. I believe we have attributes, we have characteristics that we have to know. And in some contexts, those attributes are strengths, and in sometimes they're weaknesses. So I'll give you the example that I like to use all the time because it's funny, is I am chronically disorganized. I'm very disorganized, right?
You are?
Terribly, yeah. And I've always thought of this as a weakness. Simon, what are your weaknesses? I'm disorganized, right?
Yeah.
So I was at a networking event many years ago, in the early days of my career, and I met a guy, and he was like, Simon, you're fantastic. Would love to work with you. Here's my card. Now, if I was organized, I'd be texting from the cab on the way home or emailing the next day when I get to work, of course. But I'm disorganized. I lost the business card almost immediately, right? 2 weeks later, I found the business card at the bottom of a briefcase. And so I emailed him. I said, I don't know if you remember me. We met 2 weeks ago. I'd love to reconnect. And he wanted to work with me more because he thought I was busy. He thought there was such high demand from me.
Yes, that's why it took so long.
Right? That's why it took so long.
Yes.
So is being disorganized a strength or a weakness? The answer is it depends. In that context, it was actually a strength. In different contexts, when somebody says, I need you to get this done by this time, it can be a liability. So what stacking the deck means is putting yourself in situations where your attributes are more likely to reveal themselves as strengths and try and avoid situations where your attributes are more likely to pull you back, right? So stacking the deck is not about cheating. It's about making sure that you're in the right place that make you strong and avoiding the places that make you weak. So for example, if you're bad at math, don't do jobs that require lots of math, right?
Right. Yes.
It's. I know it sounds trite, but
no, it's true.
It's sometimes that silly, I love working with others. I love working on teams, right? And so when a project comes up, I always make sure that I have a group that I can work with because I know I'll do better work. If I work by myself, it's more stressful and the work is a lower standard. And so I know that about me. I know that I like working with people. So I stack the deck. I try very hard to work at least with one other person or to work on a team to complete a project, right?
Right.
As opposed to leave this to me, I'll get this done by myself. Some people, that is their strength, to work by themselves, not me.
Right.
So again, I try and stack the deck by working with people as often as possible when I have difficult things to do.
So you don't like the word strength or weakness. What word did you say you like? You like?
I mean, we use strength and weakness because it is relative. But
yeah.
The point is, it's not that I'm so anti the words. It's more like recognize that it is relative.
What are your synonym for strength? What are your because
what are my characteristics and attributes that I have?
Yes.
So I like working with somebody.
Yeah, you're a team player.
I'm a team player.
Yeah.
Sometimes a strength, sometimes a weakness.
Okay. What other ones?
I think out loud. Sometimes a strength, sometimes a weakness. Right? I think quickly, sometimes too quickly, right? Sometimes a strength, sometimes a weakness. Sometimes things need more consideration, right?
Right.
So none of these things are advantages or disadvantages. Depends on the context. They're not inherently strong or weak.
Got it.
And I think we make that mistake. We label, we say things about ourselves and we label them strong or weak, and then what happens if, somebody's look at all their strengths and look at all my weaknesses. Now we're comparing ourselves and we're destroying our confidence. But in the right contexts, all of your weaknesses have strengths. And in the wrong context, all of your strengths are liabilities. You have a big ego, that guy's great. In the wrong context, it comes across as conceit.
Right.
Or excessive. So yeah, I just think we have to stop judging whether something is strong or weak and just label what it is, what the behavior is, what the attribute is.
Do you watch TV?
Of course.
Okay, what is your favorite TV show?
It depends on,
It depends. It's always
depends on the context.
Exactly. Depends on the context.
I love the Great British Bake Off, the Great British Baking Show.
You like that show?
Love. Because to me, that is an embodiment of what life should be, which is a competition where we help each other. Like, how good is that? They're competing. There is a winner.
Yeah.
People get thrown off the show every single episode.
Yeah.
And if it were an American show, they're building all of this drama and like, this person hurt me, and because that's what we do in America. We make it a competition. Well, they're competing against each other and they help each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, to me, the beauty of that show is it's sort of like what I imagine the world should be like.
Show. Okay, what's your favorite movie?
I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So, you know, I like the Star Wars franchise. I like many of the TV shows that franchise has produced, and a lot of the movies too. So,
what's your favorite book?
That's a harder one for me because I don't read much.
Do you listen to books?
No, I don't. I have a pretty bad case of ADHD, and so I love the idea of books.
Yeah.
But I struggle to read them, and everybody thinks I'm really well read.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have thought too.
I'm not. I joke that I've written more books than I've read, which is true.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that you said that.
And I carried a lot of shame about it for a long time because, you know, we all think we have to be readers to be,
totally,
to get ahead in the world or to be smart. And so I hid the fact for many years that I didn't read books. I love buying books. I love the idea of books. It's not that I'm anti, it's just I struggle with it.
Right.
And so I've read some of a lot of books.
Right. That's exactly. Me too.
I started a lot of books. And I have stacks of books next to my bed, of which I intend to get to them one day. But I prefer, I learn from conversations and talking to people because I struggle to read.
Do you listen to podcasts besides your own maybe, or?
I mean, again, it's one of those things like I never know when. I mean, sure, I've listened to episodes here and there, but
it's not really what you're.
No.
So what
I should. I like the idea of it again.
Like, because how often do you do your podcast?
We have seasons, so we do it once a week.
You do once a week
when we're in season, yeah.
And then what do you do when you're not traveling and doing speaking? Like, what do you do for fun?
I love the arts.
Okay.
So I love making art and I love seeing art. And
are you an artist?
I take photographs, yeah.
Oh.
But I like visiting. I like going to museums and galleries and performances and concerts and I miss New York. I miss the fact that there was so much talent everywhere in New York. I definitely miss New York, the art scene. But I love art. I do an incredible amount of Lego.
You do?
Yeah,
with your niece and nephew?
No, they let them do it themselves. I do.
You do it really?
Yeah, no, of course I occasionally do it with them. Yeah, I do Lego with them. But
I have Lego upstairs if you want to use it.
I do Lego by myself a lot. Like I have stacks and stacks of Lego sets that, I pull them out and I do one.
Do you do puzzles too?
I like puzzles a lot, yeah. I like Liberty puzzles. You know those?
Which ones are the Liberty ones?
Oh my God, they're the best.
Which ones are those? I thought I knew, but
yeah, no, they're the best.
What makes them so the best?
They're not normal jigsaw puzzles. They're wood and they're cut out in all these wonderful different shapes. And so, usually when you do a jigsaw puzzle, first you do the frame.
Yeah.
You can't because there's no frame pieces. Like they don't exist. Oh. You have to, they're magical. Yeah. Liberty puzzles are the best.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love that. Do you know how to do a Rubik's Cube? Just because I would think you'd be good at it. No?
Yeah. I mean, I'm plenty nerdy, but I think people's assumptions, like I'm a big reader that does Rubik's Cubes and, it's like, it's so funny how, yeah.
Yeah. That's why I want to know who you are.
I'm not good at Rubik's Cubes.
No?
But I like New York Times Spelling Bee. I love word games. I love Scrabble.
Wordle? I love Scrabble.
I had my Wordle phase and I'll be honest with you, I got sick of it. Well, after the New York Times bought it, like they started doing like words that I didn't even know were words. Like it stopped being fun.
Exactly.
It's just supposed to be a silly fun game that takes 5 minutes. Like stop.
Exactly.
So I actually stopped doing Wordle. I do the New York Times Spelling Bee, which I love. I do love crossword puzzles. I love Scrabble. I love word games.
I love Boggle. Do you ever play
Boggle? Oh my God, I haven't played Boggle in years. I love Boggle.
Oh my God.
It's a very noisy game, but I like it a lot.
It's the best game ever.
Yeah, it's great. Boggle's great.
Boggle's the best game ever.
It totally inspired me. I want to play Boggle now.
Right? I play it all the time. I mean, I hate to say it, but I love that game.
Yeah, no, I love Boggle.
That's like one of my favorite pastimes.
Yeah.
And then when you were younger, this is just my curiosity about you. Like when you were young, before all this, how were you as a teenager? Like, were you always very thoughtful? Were you always optimistic? Were you?
I mean, you'll have to ask my family and friends. Nerdy and dorky is probably what my sister would say. I was nerdy and dorky. I mean,
Did you play sports?
I mean, I was athletic, but not an athlete.
Okay.
So I played, like I ran, but not on the team. And I played tennis, but not on the team. Like I was athletic. I still am athletic, but I'm not an athlete.
Were you a good student?
Good enough.
Yeah.
I wasn't like straight A great student. I mean, I was fine.
Are you still in the Rand Corporation as an advisor or?
Yeah, I think I'm still I haven't worked with them in a while, but yeah, I think I'm still in the system. Yeah.
Sounds pretty good anyway.
Rand is cool. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Rand is a big, very cool think tank. And I've had amazing meetings and amazing difficult conversations. I love people who are smarter than me. I think that to me, that's like, I don't read, but I do love spending time with people who are much smarter than me. I'm invigorated by it.
Who is one of the people that you thought was like, who you're really impressed by, who like just really you were inspired by that you spent time with?
I mean, there's a long list.
Just give me one or two.
Well, there's names that you don't know. I mean, like there's a lot of folks in the military who are some of the smartest people I know.
Right.
And who see the world in a way that nobody else does and asks questions in the way that nobody else does. And if I can spend all my time with them, I would be much smarter.
Do you have a mentor or did you have a mentor?
I think it's important to have mentors. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a mentor anymore. I mean, I have a group of people that I call on a regular basis. If I'm stuck or I can't figure something out, I believe in sounding boards. I think anybody who thinks that they have to make every decision by themselves is setting themselves up for eventual collapse.
Right.
I think it's very important to get alternative points of view, to get counsel, to be open to the counsel as opposed to fighting with them to prove that you're right. And just bounce ideas. And I don't make big or difficult decisions without talking to somebody first. My sister and I are a very good team. And rarely do I make difficult decisions without checking in with her first. She's a very good sounding board. Yeah. Very talented. Yeah.
That is so nice. Does she work with you at the company?
Yeah. We work together. Yeah. There's 3 partners and my sister, Sarah is one of them.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, and my other partner. And like, we're just like the 3 of us have like the most complementary skill set. It's very special. I've been looking for something like that for a long time.
That's really nice. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think basically I've taken up like hours of your time, probably like 2. You're falling asleep over there. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. You've been a phenomenal guest.
Thank you.
And I'm so thankful and happy and grateful that you did this because, Thanks. Like I said, you've been requested so many times. I can't.
That's very nice. Thank you.
I should show you my like list of like emails and DMs. People like, how come you haven't ever had Simon Sinek? Like so many.
That's very nice. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I love meeting you and I appreciate it.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.